This time on Captain Cass's laboratory, we're working on the Haunted Rails Rickety Railroad Station. So here's the house itself, just so you can see it. Don't really need the house. There's the hole in the bottom where this thing goes. What's going to be horrible is this is the same thing they use in Grizzly's Manor? Not Grizzly, it's not a bear. And, well, they're notorious for breaking and they're usually not repairable. So we're going to open this one up and see what's going on. See if there's anything we can do. So the message says, that was attached to this, says replace lights and fix the sound. Since I don't need the porcelain house, I'm going to put it back in its carton so it doesn't get damaged. Like that. So now it's back in its box. So, yeah. So it's 6 volts DC. 6 volts DC. I think the reason why these things die is because the overvoltage from their power supplies. So, turn it on. So, the sound distorts. And notice, no lights. What happens is the circuitry inside overheats and then it burns out. They're usually not repairable. But it doesn't mean we're not going to try. First thing I want to do is I want to see how much overvoltage we got on this machine here. Coming from the AC adapter. Well, that's unique. I have under voltage. You see it says 472. That's not enough power. That's strange. I just did the rail dining car. She has power supplies backwards. They're 2 different voltages. When I had the dining car, or the train with the last video, or the video with the car, because I don't know if the last video, they're not always put up in order. Mine was 3 volts, not 6. This is a 3 volt power supply that says train. So, I still have the box here since I just finished that video like a minute ago. Also, that's a tight fit in there. This one says Railroad Station. Yeah, so now I'm going to have to check that other car because I set it up for this power supply. And it's the wrong power supply. So this is a 3 volt power supply, which is putting out 4.72 volts free float, which is fine. Hey, look, light's working. Volume's not. Light is. So we're partway there. Now, some electronics, underpowering them is just as bad as overpowering them. Now I know why the free float on this unit is 9 volts, or this power supply is 9.7778 volts. And that's because it's powering something that draws a lot of power. Those are incandescent bulbs, the same kind of bulbs you run in your car, as an example. And, well, they draw a lot of juice. The blue one might be burned out. But my question is why do we have no sound? Oh, because I have the sound off. That's loud. That just might be a burned out bulb. Burned out bulb. I'm going to turn that off, and if you don't know how to, if you can't test your bulb, you don't have a 6-volt power supply to power it up with, what you can do is set your machine to, oops, too far, continuity. I need to tip it here so I can see it because all I'm seeing is a reflection of my lights. Like that. And a filament has continuity, meaning it's a short, that's why it glows red or orange or what have you, or white. And you touch the hot right there, and then the negative. Well, that could be my fingers because I'm touching both. Let me touch the glass. So now I'm just touching the glass and the top, and I have no continuity, so it's going through my fingers. So it's a burned out bulb. The filament looks okay, but that doesn't mean anything. It could have a very small break next to one of the ends. Oh no, it's broken. I got magnifiers on so I can see it with the light. Yeah, it's a broken filament. Okay, so this one might be easy. They're usually not fixable, but now we just have to listen to the sound. Oh, what am I doing? I turn it off here. We're just listening to the sound. If you want to skip, you can skip. back to the beginning. So, this is a 4.8 volt bulb. That's what it says on the side. I'm sure this one probably says the exact same thing. Nope, this one actually says 6 volts. So, I have a 6. I used to. I'm gonna rephrase it. One of my cars was an old 6 volt system. It's no longer a 6 volt system, but it used to be a 6 volt system. And if I knew where the light bulbs were, I'd plug it in here just to test it. It'd be a white bulb, but it would at least have the blue glow. But I don't know where my 6 volt bulbs are from the car when it was 6 volts. It's no longer 6 volts. It's now 48 because it's now electric. But if you've never seen the inside of one of these, we'll show you. We're also going to look for any burns, discoloration, things like that. Wow, these screws are tight. Blown up components. Speaker sounds okay to me, but sometimes they have to get hot, meaning you have to run them for like 30 minutes before they start to fail. That's how one of the ones was I worked on, where it didn't do any distortions, but after about, usually right around a half an hour, the lights would get stuck on and they would like fade to a dimmer shade and just sit at a solid burn, and then the sound would sound like you're listening through water. It was really distorted. So the system had to get hot. Unfortunately, there was no repair for it because it wasn't these small components getting hot, it was the blob chip right here that was getting hot. So it's a shame, but it does happen. All right, so these are pretty basic. Your soundtrack is held on the blob chip, which is right here on this vertical board. On your horizontal board, which I know it's reversed when you stick it back into the unit, you have some resistors, a whole bunch of transistors, and some capacitors. So we're just going to check the components, look for anything obvious. I'm going to bring another light in so I can see a little bit better. So, all the resistors look pretty good. This one has some discoloration, but I can't tell if that's from heat or if it's from the fact it's got a really crappy paint job. It's a big resistor. It's only 1.5 ohms, so it's very small as far as ohmage goes, but it's a 1 watt resistor. So that one gets toasty. That's also a 1 watt resistor. And those guys right there are half watt resistors. So this thing gets a little warm. Let's see the transistors. I don't see any bulges, bubbles, chips, or nicks. And the capacitors, they're not bulged. They're still flat. Oh, there's another transistor hiding in the corner. Looks good. Then we got a Zener diode, which looks good. We also have a resistor right here, which is why you have a low and a high volume on the bottom. That's to the resistors to make it the low volume, and it bypasses the resistor when you flip it to high volume. Cone. Cone feels good. Doesn't appear to be cracked or blown. Some hair on the bottom of the circuit board, or dust, or what have you. I don't see any corrosion. Nothing's gotten hot. I see no browned or blackened tracks. I'm wondering if it's just the wrong power supply was the problem. It was underpowered, which again can cause it to overheat. Too low of power is bad, too high of power is bad. There's a range, and you need to be within that range on most all electronics. Light bulbs are a little different. LEDs, light bulbs, things like this that emit light. But when it comes to computer chips, like this guy here, and components like these transistors, they're more sensitive to under and over voltage issues, especially the blob chip. That's one you do not want to go outside of its tolerances for long periods of time, because it'll fail and crack. So now I'm going to see if I can see the blob chip, since it's facing inwards, and check to see if it's cracked or bubbled. Help me with that. I'll whip out the old handy otoscope. There's some small components soldered right next to the blob chip too. And I can't tell if it's a reflection or not, but it looks like there might be a burn. No, there's definitely some discoloration next to the blob chip. The blob chip looks okay. Nope, scratch that. Blob chip's got a chunk of it missing in the resin, and there's some corrosion from underneath the resin. That's what I was afraid of. That's the most common failure when you have sound issues. There's really no repair. I'll clean it with some rubbing alcohol and a toothbrush. Not mine, I'll use somebody else's. But I'll try and bring it up to the camera, but it's going to be hard to see. Oh, actually, let me see if I can just zoom in. You probably won't be able to see it because even with the otoscope it was hard. See if it'll focus at that close. It does. Alright. I need a pointy thing. Pointy thing. So there is a component right here. And you can't see it, but with the otoscope, this is actually corrosion. That's why I'm going to clean it. And this kind of gray line, it's really hard to see next to this black. That's corrosion and a chip. And then right here, that silver dot and that silver dot is a resistor. And then trying to adjust it more. So here's the resistor. You see that white patch right there? Kind of whitish gray? That looks like a burn. And that's probably from underpowering this with a smaller power supply. Very sensitive to voltage. When it says 6 volts, it's supposed to be within plus or minus 10%. Free float doesn't count because there's no load. Once there's a load on it, you try to be within that 10%. Most components are 10%. Some are 1, some are 3, some are 5. Heck, the job I work at, they're all 6%. Everything has to be within 6%. It's really easy to figure out 5% in your head. 6%, you might need a calculator. So if it's 120 volts, 10% would be add 12 or subtract 12. 5 would be add or subtract 6. So when you do 6%, you're like 6.8. So that's what I do for the day job, is to check components. But right now it's working. So what I'm going to have to do, and I'm not going to subject you to the torture, is I'm going to run this while I'm doing stuff. So I'm just going to have it playing its music and train sounds over and over and over and over and over again until it stops, or I get sick of it, or the distortion starts. If it's like the last one, it's going to be about 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, I reset it and it would start doing it around 13, 14 minutes because it was warm. I'm not going to screw these down tight. I'm just putting them in enough that the bottom doesn't fall off so I can move it around, because when it starts to screw up, I'm going to have to unscrew it and see physically which component is hot, if there's one that is hot. So you touch it with your finger, or you can use a IR, temperature gun. You can use a temperature thermometer. I have a sensitive one that has a metal rod. You put it against a computer chip and it tells you the temperature of the chip or component. It also works for water. So if you want to see what your boiling water is at, or if you're making candy, or if you have something that's ice and you want to see what the temperature is, so you don't close to ice and you don't want to freeze it. And it gives it to you in Fahrenheit, Celsius, and Kelvin, which I don't know too many people outside of scientists that use the Kelvin, but it does all of them because it's not a cheap little machine. So, but anyhow, and I'm going to search for this bulb in 6 volt. Worst case, this is a small or a short backup light bulb from a car in 12 volts, or a marker light in 12 volts would be this size. I'm going to see if I can find a 6 volt, and then we can just paint the lens. This lens is all chippy, and it's because it's not really a blue lens, it's paint. This one is the same. It's starting to chip. It's also got a thin layer of paint. It's probably that gel coat paint they used to use on disco lights and stuff when everything was incandescent. Now that we use LEDs for everything, we just get the LEDs to change color. We don't have to usually worry about gels. So, technology. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. If you have these, I might try it, but I know it didn't work on one of the last ones I was using. Do not use an LED, and the reason is they fade. So I'm going to turn the volume off for a second, and then we're going to turn this on. Yeah, make sure it's, yeah, there we go. I want to make sure it was actually on because there's a delay for the yellow. But when it turns off and it flickers, there's a fade. It doesn't just go 6060, go 6543, 6543. It fades back and forth on the thing. So if you see how the light goes in and out, an LED would go off and on. It doesn't look as cool. That's why certain things you can't do with LED because of the fade. Although technology has gotten way better and you can do fades on LEDs now. Some LEDs can do it, some can't. They tell you that on the packaging. When I did custom cars, LED fades were just starting to come out, and a lot of the stuff I needed to be faded were fade in and out. I still used incandescent bulbs. So when the LEDs came out, they worked, but they didn't have the longevity because of technology. It's been 15, 20 years since I've been doing custom cars that did this, and now the LED fades are much better. And they still fail just the same. So, but anyway, so I'm going to turn this on, listen to it. We'll be back later with a result. And in the meantime, we'll see what I can find to replace that guy that doesn't work. Okay, it's on, but the sound has stopped and it's intermittent when it comes back. So use an infrared thermometer to read the temperatures on here, and you can see it's still flashing. And just so you can see, flip her over. It's in low. See the switch? If I go to high, nothing. Off. You should still have the light, but go back to low. Anyhow, probing the circuit board. As far as temperatures go, most of the temperatures are in the mid 70s, but if you see there's my max. My max was go to it. That's the light. I think it erased because it held. It's been off for a few minutes, but my max was a little over 100 degrees, and at 100 degrees was coming from right in here. I was trying to get the blob chip. It doesn't feel that hot, but I can't actually get my finger on the chip, and it could be that resistor that's next to the corrosion on the board. Sometimes you can turn them off and turn them back on and they'll reset. Nope. So I'm going to turn it off just in case there's bleed through. We're going to disconnect the full power. We're going to give it a second for everything to discharge. But where are we at now? Make sure I'm not picking up my hand. 84, 82, 82, 80. I'm just moving it across the different components. And all those seem fine because the air temperature in this room is 73, I think. Problem with getting that blob chip is I got to come in at a sharp angle and it's reflecting. So I think it's like the last one that I had to deal with. I think the blob chip's bad. It's failing. Unfortunately, there's no repair for it, but the lights will still work at least. I mean, it's something. Well, according to my thermometer, it's 72.3. So this being in the 80s, it's getting a lot of heat dissipation because the room is so cool compared to maybe the other rooms in the house. So, didn't have it all the way in. So the sound's probably not going to work until it cools down or resets, because it read at one point, one of the angles I was on, it actually read 110 degrees. That's pretty warm for a 6-volt system. Heck, I don't even think a light bulb's that hot, which is hard to read because it reflects. Light bulb is 94. I mean, you can feel it's 94. It's not so hot you'll burn yourself, but it's definitely warmer than everything else. So it could have false read the chip because it's reflective. You can't use these infrared thermometers on reflective surfaces. They don't give you the most accurate. But just probing around the circuit board, everything's in the low 80s. And then I get a spike in the corner. It could be a false read, or it could be the chip is actually overheating, and that's why I lost all the sound again. So, unfortunately, there is no repair for this. If the lights work, you can use this like it does. This one should be on, except that it's burned out filament, and I have the new bulbs on order. I actually found these. I'll try and link them below. I don't know how many they'll have, but these are the bulbs they say for the Rickety Railroad in Greasley's Manor. So you have your bulbs to, you know, at least have the lights. I mean, it's better than nothing. The soundtrack, the only thing I can think for the soundtrack is get a little MP3 recording device, record the soundtrack, and then transfer it. I have a video of one of the boats. I did it on a couple of pieces where I've done that to salvage the sound because the sound chips had burned out. Very common on Lemax. The only one I've ever seen it fail on in Department 56 is this. This puck, or whatever you want to call it, is the most common failure that I've seen on these. Is the lights will freeze up and you lose sound. This one, the light doesn't appear to be freezing up, but I don't have the other light to tell me, because what happens is they both flicker. This one's on more, but it gets dim. And when this gets too hot, this will go on static, and then this one will go on static. It may not be doing that because there's no load on this side, because this bulb is, well, broken. It's got a bad filament, sorry. So if you have this piece, or any of the pieces that use this style puck, and you lose your sound, unless it's a speaker where it's crackly, your sound is going to be gone forever. This one has corrosion, and it looks like a burn on the little circuit board that's housing the blob chip. I did want to post one of these before, but this is only the second one I've come across like this, or excuse me, this style puck, and I wasn't sure, but I've heard a lot about them, and I've talked to other repair places around the country, and they all say the same thing, that when the sound goes, your puck is bad and you should just get some flickery lights to put inside. This one, the flickery light at least still works. It should technically work once the bulb arrives, and I put the blue one in here. I'll test it before I ship it back, but this guy is unfortunately bad, just like the majority of them. So this was a poor design, since I've heard nothing but bad things about these. Of course, the one for Greasley's Manor is orange. This one's black. They take the same bulbs. They're both 6 volts. They have different soundtracks, of course, but the flashing sync, which is very similar, the plug, it's all the same except for the programming and the color of the plastic. So as far as the Rickety Railroad's train station goes, that's pretty much it. If your puck starts to fail, unfortunately there's not a lot you can do to it. If the lights still work, just flip it to volume off so it doesn't occasionally sporadically turn on for a second and make noises. Or turn it off, let it sit for a few minutes to cool down, and do it again. But I don't think I've let it sit long enough, because it did die on me, and then I unplugged it, pulled out the temperature gauge, plugged it back in, the sound started working, let it play some more, and then it died again, and that's when I turned on the camera. So I have had this thing playing for about 15 minutes before it started screwing up the volume and then cutting out completely. As you can see, the light's still flashing. So, but anyhow, can't fix them all. Unfortunately, this one, it could have overheated because of the wrong 8-hour AC adapter, or it could just overheated from age. I can't tell you the specific reason, but at least the lights work. Well, a light. And then when this light shows up, I'll double check it. I'll test it again with the light. But as far as it goes, that pretty much concludes the train station guts that slide inside the house. If you have this piece and you don't care about the sound, you can just get some flickering LEDs to put in there if you want to make the flickering effect. Fairy lights, they come now where you can change the colors. One half the string can be one color, one half the string can be the other, and one half can flash, one half doesn't have to. So you can imitate these with 4.5 volt fairy lights. Some of the 3 volt ones will do it now too. LED or light technology is getting more advanced and a lot cheaper. So you don't have to run these incandescent bulbs that pull more power than the fairy light string. So there are options out there. You can make your own. You can buy pre-made stuff. Amazon, AliExpress, Temu, etc. has things, or you can make your own. Or in my village display, I have Greasley's Manor. It didn't come with the puck when I bought it. I just bought one of those cheap swords you buy at like a carnival. I got one at Goodwill for like 95 cents. I took it out and the flashing strobing lights, I just stuck it inside the house. It was a 4.5 volt, so I just put it in there, spliced the wires into a plug, which a lot of you are familiar with if you have Lemax, this style plug, and that's it. So you have options, but sounds the biggest failure that isn't repairable. There are options, but you can never get it back to the original unless you find a parts house, or you just find one of these in a garage sale or something, or Goodwill, where they didn't know what it was and it's for sale for like $1 or $2, and you take it home and plug it in and it works. I have seen these many years ago at Goodwill, just this puck, just like this. So not going to be so common now, but you never know. You never know what you come across. So that should take care of it for this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.